dawned on me. I haven't done that many Christian documentaries or Christian morality films in a while. So how about we do one of those for today's episode? Are you ready to see another one of these kind of movies? Well, too bad, that's what we're watching. So today's film is called Doorway to Danger, and from the little I could find of it, it's basically described as a British version of Deception of a Generation, except whereas that was over an hour, about an hour and a half or so, this one is only 24 minutes long. And I know what you're thinking. Is there any kind of mention of Life of Brian in this film? Unfortunately, no. There is no one talking about how horribly offensive The Life of Brian by Monty Python was. But apparently that came out 20-something years before this movie did. So I guess in that respect, the controversy kind of died down by the time they got to this film. The only other thing of note is the production company behind this film, Sunrise Video, only made one film, and it was this one. So this is the only film that this company has made. Well, I think that perfectly sets up everything. Let's jump into today's episode. This is Doorways to Danger.
All around the world, there's been an increase in the practice of spiritism, fortune-telling, witchcraft, and Satanism. This video seeks both to warn and inform the viewer about the possible dangers of any involvement with the occult.
Well, that should be easy to figure out. Just look for them right next to the occult shelf. It's right next to the collection of Video Jamais made by Saga. With that, we begin with the opening theme of the video, set to the best Kmart Simply Red could afford, as images of tarot cards and Ouija boards fly past footage of theme park rides.
Do you know your birth sign? Do you follow the stars? Believing in bad luck and superstition. Predictions in your horoscope beginning to come true.
Oh man, this is the greatest Insane Clown Posse music video I've ever seen. Though, I have to ask, where are the two singer guys at? They don't seem to be showing up at all. Whatever, time to get to one of our main speakers for the special.
People like us Christian ministers are having to counsel youngsters time and time again. They get involved with the soft stuff, the horoscopes, the tarot cards, the Ouija boards.
We then cut over to what they call Britain's top playing Christian artists' heartbeats, known for their 90s hit singles like Jesus, We Celebrate Your Victory, I Surrender, In Heavenly Armor, and of course, who could forget the classic Hear the Engines Roll Now.
I mean, do you remember that girl up north we met? That's right. Yeah, she was absolutely ensnared by it. You know, she just had a simple seance in her house because she thought it was just some fun, you know, something fun to do. And the television exploded.
Do they know that we're watching them? Do they realize that they're on camera right now?
Reminds me of a teacher down in the south who actually, in a religious education class, actually taught their kids there various things like fortune telling and the horoscopes and the superstition behind that.
Just wait a while, guys. The atheist leftist school systems are only going to get 10 times worse in the future. Just trust me. And then we just abruptly end that section. And to think, I was just getting into what they were saying. We meet our next speaker, Eddie Voss, a speaker who specializes in talking about what's wrong with the occult to a bunch of kids that look like they might be on something. I mean, some of these kids are just staring into your soul, and some of them, I think, are from another planet.
And I went out into the foyer of the school, and there is a young lady, clearly demented, screaming.
And going by these stellar special effects, she then turned into a comic book character.
I stepped in and got hold of her and took her very quickly out from the foyer of the school and through a door and onto the field, which was just adjacent. I said to her, I don't know what has caused this. I don't know who you believe in, but I am telling you that Jesus is Lord.
Not a bad line there, but I personally would have went with Jesus is King. Or at least I would have until this album came out, released by a certain someone who said a couple of rather inappropriate things. Geez, funny faces, comedic mugging. Next speaker up is David, a former male witch. Ha!
I would say that the biggest influence on young people today is books and videos, because they're the most accessible.
Well, it is still good to see that we are talking about such blatant propaganda that is being peddled to our children and the future generations to come. Thank goodness I was shown nothing but tapes like this when I was a child. They really put me on the straight and narrow, put me on the right path. And look at me now. I'm a joyous soul that's full of hope, and if it worked for me, it'll work for you. Well, on to our next subject, an old classic of other films I've covered before, like Deception of a Generation and Mazes and Monsters, role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons.
Talking about witches, wizards, Dungeons and Dragons, stuff like that, occult videos about witchcraft and demonology. All these things spark off interest in people.
If I wanted to play a relatively popular game that was loved by a bunch of casuals and nerds alike, I will happily stick with Porky Man, thank you very much. Although whatever you do, don't tell Pastor Phil Arms. I think he would sincerely disapprove of me playing that game. Oh, and I guess Peter, don't tell them as well. They seem to have a sordid history with Porky Man as well. But you know what's even more demonic and satanic and generally worse than D&D? You guessed it, Halloween.
Halloween is the highest satanic festival of the year. And it's the night when all the forces of darkness empower Satanists and witches for the coming year.
Guys, I hate to be a pesky fact checker in all of this, but I'm pretty sure that Kirk Cameron actually debunked this kind of thing in his classic hit film, Kirk Cameron Saving Christmas. In that film, he brought up the common misconception that Christmas is actually a pagan holiday, or is at least rooted with certain pagan traditions, but Kirk Cameron actually debunked that theory, and as we all know, Kirk Cameron is almost never wrong on things. Feel free to have an open debate with Kirk Cameron. Your move, atheists.
A majority of people just accept it as being trick-or-treat, apple dunking and party time. But that's what's going on underneath it. Halloween trick-and-treat is just a very, very acceptable veneer.
Yes, that is absolutely true. And also, it encourages the horribly degenerate act of costume playing, I believe it's called. Clearly, someone celebrating Halloween because they enjoy it is directly affecting my life. And I have to tell them that they shouldn't be able to do that because that is my right. But you want to know when it's not fair? When people tell me what I can and can't do. Because clearly, if it were to happen to me, then that means that I am being harassed and targeted, and it's not fair because no one truly understands me. Now we get to some more interviews, like with this woman who I guess just goes by question mark. Sure, why not? I already saw a movie earlier this year that had characters named Suddenly and Accidentally, so I guess anything goes. After all, anything is possible with Bush in the White House.
I can't honestly believe that I sort of crawled out of a river or something and gradually evolved into a human being. I think it is much more credible to say that I was created by someone.
And now we get, well, they say they're pictures to go along with paganism, but honestly it just looks like AI made it. Honestly though, whoever made this art could learn a thing or two from whoever made the poster for SOS. Now that is a work of art. After another use of the opening theme song, we then get an interview with a young woman named Carolyn. She says that she's experienced occult imagery in school, and then we just move on to the next thing. People, please, I like what you're saying, but you can't rush these things, you know? Clearly this video could learn a thing or two from Jeremiah Films. They know how to drag out these kind of videos to at least 50 minutes. They don't have to rush these kind of things along to meet a 24-minute deadline. Anyway, we move on from that to them discussing the Ouija board.
What happens when you use a Ouija board is that you open up doorways into the lower spiritual realms where demonic beings, evil spirits exist.
Next up, we get our speakers warning us about the evils of horror films. Oh, I completely agree. Ghostbusters 2, not a very good movie. Although, it is still better than Ghostbusters 2016. Oh, that reminds me, I gotta use the word woke more times in this video, just to hammer home things I dislike.
Talking to a young man recently, he'd watched from the age of 12 or 13 a number of occult-based films like The Exorcist and The Omen. They had had a severe effect on his life, and he'd lived in fear and had recurring nightmares for an extended period of time.
Back with Carolyn, she continues her story before she was so rudely cut off. Hey, good to see that Dingo Pictures were still getting work back then, in between their own movies. She launches into a story about how she actually saw people use their occult powers to levitate off the ground and distort their own faces.
And I was like, oh no, this is my pal, you don't even go around with her, okay? I'm not gonna hurt her on purpose.
Okay, moving swiftly along. Now we get to a mailman who talks about the horribly satanic and demonic magazines that would pop up in people's mail. After him, we get a child abuse expert talking about how child abuse is only a Satanism thing, even connecting the dots to abortion.
Christ said, "Touch not one hair of this child's head." Satanists believe that they should do the opposite of that.
And finally, we bring it all back to the perm and mustachioed reverend we saw from the beginning of the film.
And I'd just say to youngsters today, don't start on that path. Once you start on it, it's a very slippery slope that ends in disaster.
And I've been going down a very dark path. It was the slippery slope to the occult.
So that was Doorways to Danger, and you know, it's okay. It's okay. It's not great, but it's okay. What I think this movie was missing were some of the cutting-edge special effects that we've seen from Jeremiah Films. I mean, they could have really used a green screen, like they used in their Trick or Treat Halloween Pagan Invasion video. And I believe another problem here is that they didn't have one or two charismatic leads in this film. I don't think anyone's really going to beat master classes of leading men like Gary and Phil from Deception of a Generation. I appreciate what they were trying to do, but sorry, London. I guess you'll just never be the same as America. And speaking of which, next time on The Captivating Christian, we're going to be talking about a Christian TV show from the late 70s, early 80s that came straight up from Canada. But until then, may Jesus be with you.
Where they suck down teens.